Right, sorry, we're going to have to restart again. Unfortunately, LinkedIn booted us out a little bit there. So for those of you that are watching it, this is take 2. Never had to do that before, but we're good at doing that. So let's just start again. I think we'll start back at paradise, shall we?
Yes, absolutely. This is why I don't leave it.
Sorry about that, folks. We've never had that before. But look, just coming back on track, Lisa and I were just talking about the many changes that are happening out there and affecting businesses. And Lisa was just covering off the many changes about what's happening out there in the marketplace for businesses in terms of legislation changes and trying to be compliant. So sorry about that, Lisa, you're in full flow there.
Yes. So, I mean, we've had all sorts of changes like additional sick leave, Fair Pay Agreements Act, huge tax changes. I'm not across them. I think there's enough in the employment space to keep me out of trouble. And it's really this just a perpetual moving feast for business owners. And also what I'm seeing is, as a general thing, there's a very much a change in shift in behaviours and attitude of staff. A lot of people somewhat reluctant to go back to work after COVID. And this is causing a huge deal of challenges for business owners.
Yeah, we were talking about that just this morning over a bowl of cereal.
Yes.
And I'm saying it too, like lots of people are still, I mean, obviously, you know, we're always trying to get that work-life balance. You know, we know we borrow the employees from their life to come and work for us, but at the end of the day, we need them to be at work because we build good culture and lots of conversations happen on the fly. So how do you go about trying to kind of like encourage people who want to be at home to be at work, but also to put the employer, the business owner, in a good light who's just about pulling their hair out? Lisa, help me.
One of there's several things that I've been talking about a lot recently. The main one is about focusing more on outputs than hours. What are the outputs that you need from somebody? And this with, you know, there are certain jobs, the output is you require them to be at the sales counter in the shop selling stuff. They can't work from home. That's just the reality. But there are some jobs like accounts, admin, things like this, where you can have more flexibility. But one of the outputs you do want is about business, is about the organization culture. So there is a degree of, they do need to be in the office some of the time, but also looking at, well, can you achieve a win-win? So for both the organization and the staff, this is very much thinking differently about outputs, not hours. What are you paying them to do? And actually, that's not necessarily sitting in the office socializing. So
yeah, and that comes down to a lot of inefficiencies and a lack of productivity when people do get out of flow during all that socializing. I mean, we want them to build, you know, good relationships with each other. But I love what you're talking about output, because I'm really big on outcomes as well. You know, don't focus on they're there for 8 hours, focus on what are the outcomes. Are you achieving what you're actually paying them to do and getting more than in most respects? So look, basically I wanted to really dive into and with you about, you know, how hard it is. You know, we look at building capability and accountability toward best practices for legislation, compliance and participation. And the amount of people that say that they're compliant and go into their businesses, and we start with talking about what do you have, and they open up the bottom drawer. And the bottom drawer has got more dust in it than a house that's been mothballed. And I say to them, oh, please tell me that you've got this somewhere else in the business. Wait, Lisa, why is it that people think, oh, well, I've done an health and safety policy document in the bottom drawer, I'm sweet. But we know that's not going to get them out of jail, you know. So am I just unlucky, Lisa, or are you seeing this?
Oh, I see it all the time. And oh, yes, I've got this employment agreement. I got it 20 years ago. I'm still using the same one. It's like, okay, legislation has moved on a little bit. There is and yes, I will say there is a very strong Kiwi thing of if somebody gives me a suite of rules, I'm going to work out a way to break them. And oh God, health and safety, it's just paperwork. Well, actually, when at the point we had the Pike River disaster, you were 10 times more likely to be killed or injured at work in New Zealand than you were in the UK. That is a horrendous statistic. And this is where people are seeing it as being this paperwork exercise. It's not a paperwork exercise. It's actually there to protect everybody. You have a health and safety manual in order to make sure that people get home safely. You have an employment agreement to make sure that everybody is on the same page about what they're expected to deliver. So, you know, some basic things like start at 8:30. What does that mean? Is that walk in the door at 8:30, take off your coat, make yourself a cup of tea, etc., or is it at your desk ready to start productive work at 8:30? And God, that one causes World War III. So yes, it is about having in place a suite of rules just to make sure everybody's on the same page, because most of the issues that I end up dealing with are because the employer has been too nice, they've ignored and accepted behaviour, or because there's just a misunderstanding that hasn't actually been addressed. It's a lack of communication.
I'm actually going to put fault back on both parties. I totally agree with what you're saying, but it's so easy to give someone an employment contract and tell them to seek advice. But why don't you sit there and read it with them and go through it line by line by line and get them to understand it? Because I tell you, bottom line, most people don't even understand. The person giving it doesn't understand. The person receiving it doesn't understand. All they know is, I'm giving you a job, you're going to accept the job. And then when it comes to those difficult conversations, it's already in the contract. Refer back to the contract and they go, oh, I didn't know that, but you signed it. Oh, I didn't know that, but you gave it to them. It's like, it's doing my head in. Take the time to know what you're giving and know what you're receiving before you actually even sign it or accept someone on board. Go back to the beginning and look at it. So look, we're actually here today to talk about government policies and the impact on businesses. And I'm seeing the usual sit on our hands approach with the looming election. How are you seeing businesses operating, Lisa?
Oh, look, there is a very much a holding off at the moment. And I can understand why. I mean, we've got a very closely contested election at the moment. Whatever happens is there is going to be change. You know, from a funding point of view, even the current government has signalled that stakeholders who receive government funding that they need to cut costs. So even if we end up with exactly the same government come November this year, they have already been told they're going to have to cut costs. There is only so much money in the piggy bank. You might not believe that at times with, oh, we're going to spend another 50 billion to do this or whatever. But anyway, if we have another hung election, how long will it take to sort that out? And could we end up with a repeat of Labour coming up with a coalition when they were not the main winner? Will they repeal acts? There's been, you know, fair pay agreements, 3 waters. There's so many pieces of legislation that different parties, as part of their manifesto, have said that they're going to repeal. But will they actually do that if they get into power? Or will it kind of be, oh, that was one of those kind of forgotten election promises? What will the brave new world look like? Who can pull us out of the recession best? So there is a huge bunch of questions, and so I can understand the reticence of businesses to make any major changes. So yeah, that's where I would be at the moment.
Yeah, we're seeing it already. I mean, just in the last few days, you've had you know, obviously a vote on looking at the Parenting Act, and that was put through with being able to have both parents take leave at the same time. And whilst there was support from both sides, it got booted out. And so already we're starting to see this Are we doing what's best for business, or are we doing what's best for our political careers at the moment? So interesting times which have a massive impact on businesses. Lisa, you and I see firsthand businesses and they're nervous about, you know, just doing anything. Like they are sitting on their hand. What is your advice to business owners to navigate through this period? I mean, I know you talked about all those things of what could potentially happen, but sitting on their hand doesn't make the problem go away.
No. Keep it simple. Right now is my best advice. We don't know what's going to happen come the 14th of October, but there will definitely be changes in government policy. And back to basics. Sorry to sound like a Labour Party slogan, but government policy or not, the cost of living crisis is not going away in a hurry. People are tightening the belts. I'm having a lot more discussions about redundancy than recruitment, and I'm anticipating that this will carry on for some time. So focus on keeping your costs under control and managing your staff well, and engaging a fantastic coach like Catherine.
And we are going to stroke each other today because we are the best of the best. And if you want to have the best, then you need to work with us more on Lisa soon. But I mean, I guess for me, the last 6 months have been so heavily entrenched and people inquiring about redundancy. You know, how can I reduce my cost? There's been a little bit like a knee-jerk reaction. You know, where do I just chop immediately? And what normally happens in those redundancy processes is you've got to follow a correct process and a good faith process, but you could end up losing good people as part of collateral damage. I guess if I reflect back to, you know, we've been here before. We've been here with the recession, the election, staff shortages, nothing new. And in 2008, as a business owner, I opted for natural attrition. For those of you who don't know what natural attrition is, well, when people leave, you just don't replace them. You look at absorbing that in your business. And I got on with hunting for opportunities. You know, rather than going doom and gloom and the world's ending and I'm ending and all that, I went looking for opportunity and I got the Rugby World Cup right. So I stayed within my vision. My vision was to dominate and be recognised in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, Rugby World Cup was the perfect thing for that. Lisa, I know you are busy with the reactivity that comes with HR redundancy. I mean, it's not a pretty place to be, right? You know, you're dealing with lots of emotion. However, can you provide us with a walkthrough on how you manage positivity with these business owners?
So the thing that you're looking at when you're looking at a redundancy and restructuring, first thing is cut once, cut right. Death by 1,000 cuts is terminal in organizations. So don't go the sort of, oh, well, just knee-jerk reaction of that one person. If you're going to do it once, do it right. Sometimes you are going to have to repeat the exercise because things change, but hopefully do it once, do it right. The other thing, and look, I've done, God, thousands, if not tens of thousands of redundancies over my career.
She really isn't that old, I can tell you. She keeps reminding me, she's just a little bit younger than me.
But what I always, to get my head through it, because it's tough. It is tough to sit there, look somebody in the face and say, you've done nothing wrong, but you no longer have a job. But I do. Hey, that's hard. But what I'm looking at is actually I'm protecting the rest of those people who are staying. So I'm looking after the survivors as much as I have to make the decisions about those people who are no longer going to be with the organization. And doing it with enough dignity and respect that they're heard. So yeah, that's about how to manage the positivity in what can be a very tough time.
Yeah, it's all about approach, having humility, understanding, and knowing that it is a difficult process to go through, but also just being really open and honest with your own feelings, you know, and just saying, look, how can I help you, you know, and sharing experiences. More often than not, people doing redundancies have been made redundant themselves, so they can share from experiences. Look, Lisa, you know, in terms of business owners, CEOs, There's so much in legislation. An example of changes in legislation a lot of people aren't aware of is a reboot in the ethics codes on the 1st of April. The NZX Corporate Governance Code now invites issuers to explain how it sets a tone from the top. Gosh, tone from the top. It's always about leadership, right?
Yes.
And that is consistent with a code of ethics if training is provided less frequently than the specified 3 years. The board of directors are tasked with setting a high standard of ethical behaviour and keeping management accountable. Lisa, how do companies keep abreast of all these legislation changes? I mean, they're coming from employment, health and safety, code of ethics, human rights, and so on. I mean, privacy laws, you name it. How do they keep abreast of it all? Do I need to hire a full-time lawyer? A full-time HR?
I think one of the things is to get yourself, I mean, personally, I'm a member of the EMA and I get their regular newsletter. I have various other lawyers, accountants, and all the rest of it that I'm on their newsletters for. And so some that I sort of start to pick out that are nice, sort of short, sharp, sweet things. We at HRToolkit, the engine, they do newsletters as well, is actually one of the big things is reading those. Even if you only scan read them for, oh, hang on a minute, I didn't know about that one. Do I need to dive a bit deeper? We can't all be experts on all of these things. So you've got to keep a watchful brief about what's going on. Personally, I use the newsletters, the media, that sort of thing, to just try to keep abreast of stuff, but it's hard. It is very hard.
Look, I like what you're saying about, scan them. I mean, at the end of the day, newsletters from lawyers or experts in business is going to give you the injection that you need rather than reading something in the media that might only be half a story. And that's no disrespect to the media. I don't want to have them coming at me, but do your homework, do your due diligence, and have the right people surrounded around you to help you. Let's talk about the participation. We've talked about the closed drawer with the document in it, or documents of policies and manual contract. Let's talk about participation. I mean, in July last year, new legislation came in to protect whistleblowers. Okay, whistleblowers have been worried about whistleblowing for years because of retaliation. Now we've obviously got protection around disclosure, and that came in last year, and it makes it easier for workers to raise concern. There's been a recent court case that's been quite in the news of late, talking about health and safety, and employees raising concern around potential well, not potential, around a massive risk that could nearly have killed somebody. This includes breaking the law, risky behaviour, gross negligence, failing to take care of people, property, environment, it goes on and on and on. Lisa, as business owners, how do they get to understand that they've got to take this seriously? Serious misconduct is a two-way street. There's serious misconduct in the employment contract, but there's serious misconduct in the Health and Safety at Work Act. It's out there. So employers need to take responsibility of it, and they need to be encouraging full participation both ways. What's your take on this whole participation and the lack of it happening out there?
There's twofold things. One is employers going, we've had a lot in the media about the fact that the recruitment market is very tight. It's not actually as tight now as it was. It was bad for a period. It's not nearly as bad. So there's a fear of, oh, well, I don't want to rock the boat, because I don't want to lose that person and then I can't replace them. Well, actually, do you really want that person in your organization who's the bad apple? And often the answer is no. Actually, you need to move them on. And don't be afraid to rock the apple cart. The other thing is being too nice. And actually, contrary to popular belief, I would actually prefer to know that my bum looks big in this before I go out looking like a hippo. But once I'm out, don't tell me I look like a hippo. But it is about people avoiding those, what I term courageous conversations, and having those conversations in a way that says, actually, this is not acceptable. It's, I have these conversations all the time when I'm working through disciplinary processes with organizations around How do I say this nicely? Well, say it honestly. Don't accuse people. Stick with your facts, but actually deal with the facts and the consequences of not addressing the health and safety, of not, as we talked about one recently, of somebody who was on a roof in a very unsafe manner. Well, hang on a minute. If you don't address that, how do you fancy the headline news when that guy falls off the roof and you've got to tell his wife that, by the way, the ambulance has just arrived?
Or the whistleblower actually goes and reports about it. And your brand and reputation. I've got more on that in there, but I mean, I love how you're talking about courageous conversations, because you have to have them, right? Yeah. And if you don't have them, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. So let's start talking about some of these cases out there, because I think we need to give the listeners a bit of a reality check about what's happening. So I'm gonna quote some companies. It is public knowledge. You've got Bakeworks Limited, they're a manufacturing company, and they had a health and safety incident. Starting fine $550,000. Think they've got that in their bank account. Think the insurance company wants to pay it out. They ended up getting a discount rate of 55%. Not quite sure how discounting can happen around health and safety, but it does. That took it down to $250,000. Do you think they've got that in their bank account? Luckily for them, they ended up with a fine of only $18,000. Only, yeah. What about the brand and the reputation? And then you've got Chunder Limited. It's a construction company. Fine imposed $550,000. We've got a consistent pattern happening there. Reduced to $375,000 following aggravating and mitigating factors. However, the starting fine is real, and insurance may not necessarily cover you or be held. Lisa, what's your advice? Do you give businesses to take this compliance seriously?
I wish I knew on that one, Catherine. I mean, the reality is that the insurance companies won't cover if you have put them at risk. So, I have had quite a few situations whereby companies have cover for personal grievances. And I've been questioned very, very closely to make sure that I have followed correct process and haven't undermined or limited the insurance companies or protected the insurance company's interests. In every case, it's been absolutely fine. The insurance company has paid out, but I've been questioned very closely, and fundamentally the insurance companies are looking to wriggle out of it in some way, find somebody else to blame to say, oh, well, I was done wrong. So
go back to that contract and find front again, right?
Yeah. Use your experts. If you try and prevent issues, try and make sure. I much prefer to be the GP at the top of the cliff dealing with the headache rather than the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff dealing with the stroke because you've ignored the headaches. So, make sure you deal with those things quickly. If you have got yourself into a pickle, make sure you get the right advice from the specialist. Don't try and fudge it through, because believe you me, the cost of engaging one of us is a heck of a lot less than 550 grand. Hey, it's less than 18 grand. So don't mind if you want to pay me that, but
Absolutely, it's prevention over cure. And we're also talking about court summaries that are public, and we just raised it before about reputation and damages, and they far outweigh the fines. I mean, you've got reputation and damages, and you've got clients starting to leave, you've got employees who leave, or people that don't want to work for you. And Lisa, you were just talking about courageous conversations before. I refer to them as come to Jesus moment. What's your advice when it comes around people's reputation? I mean, you talk about courageous conversations. It comes back to that whole reputational thing, right?
Yeah. And reputation is everything. You can't. Business in New Zealand it's a very, very small environment. Even globally, it's actually very small. You get yourself a bad reputation, even if you're working in the global market. It spreads. I mean, there's nothing that spreads faster than a good piece of nasty gossip. And it gets embellished as well. But that reputation can absolutely destroy your business. So making sure that, look, if something's happened, back to prevention over cure, but if something has happened, front foot it, deal with it. don't try and hide or fudge away from it. And there's been some, I remember one with Spark. I think they'd made a some kind of boob and something had happened. I can't remember what the details were. And so over about the next week or so, there was the CEO of Spark on the TV adverts going, "I stuffed up. I'm sorry."
Own it.
Yeah,
Own it. Yeah, absolutely own it, and own it from the top.
Mhm.
Good on them. Good
Mhm.
on them, because at the end of the day, you got to actually walk it and talk it.
Yeah.
And things do happen. I mean, by best intention, you know, you can't prevent everything. If we're wanting to do that, would have a crystal ball, life would be a lot more different, maybe interesting, maybe boring, maybe better, who knows. So look, I'm a ride as an elephant, back to talking about hippos before. I'm a ride as an elephant practitioner, and I do workshops on emotional culture. The companies that engage in these workshops have better dialogue and appreciation emotion has on culture. At least in the, I call it ugly work we do sometimes with respect to conflict. Why is it that conversations are still taken out of context, or conversations are still too hard for people to have as adults and without fear of conflict or retaliation?
Oh, I wish I knew. Particularly, I mean, I work mostly with small businesses, and you know, if you're in a small team, you know everybody's families, you go to dinner with them, you know who they are. They're friends as well as employees and co-workers, and we don't want to have those conversations that somebody might get upset about. So one of the things for small business owners, I do try and encourage people to try and keep the business and personal relationship. Catherine and I are friends, but I'm very strict on, you do not talk to me about work outside of hours. Took a bit of training to get her there, but I've got her there. She's pretty good now. But it is making sure that, right, okay, we're having a business conversation or we're having a personal conversation. So that would be one thing about keeping it clear. In business conversations, if you're giving somebody negative feedback or constructive feedback or something that they may take negatively, you have, first off, you do it if possible in person. If you can't do it in person, you do it at minimum face to face, because you lose so much of that tonality. I mean, there's a huge difference here. Part of what you're communicating is your body language, is your tonality, and that's all lost when you are actually, if you just put something in writing. So your first rules, you have the conversations face to face, but the second rule is you confirm in writing. So I therefore expect you to do A, B, and C. If that's not what they took away from the conversation, then they've got the opportunity to come back and challenge. But if they, as long as you've put it in writing afterwards to summarize what you wanted to convey, if that isn't what they heard, then, and you know, I'm not going to go into courageous conversations right now, but the videos, then, you know, you have the same sort of thing with the elephants, riders and elephants. It's
and everything else in between. I guess at the end of the day, you know, people need to you all need to understand that things get lost in translation when emotions are heightened, and you might turn around and say, I don't know why Jenny saw me in that light, when at the end of the day, you know, she's worked with me for about a year, and she knows what I'm like. At the end of the day, you've just given Jenny a letter, and the letter says, I'm inviting you to a meeting to talk about. So Jenny's emotions are going to be that much more heightened. So do understand that the dynamics do change, and they do need to change. As Lisa said, you've got to front foot it. You can't just ignore it. The problem doesn't go away, and you've got to be consistent in your approach. So don't go treating people differently. It's the same level playing field, the same rules for everybody. Lisa, what other blind spots are you seeing out there where government policies are not being adhered to?
I'm not seeing any. The general thing of just not actually keeping up, not realizing it's changing, or moving forward with a presumption that's actually not correct without checking you're actually correct. So that would be, I'm not seeing too many blind spots at the moment, which is good. I think there's been sufficient, I think that was one of the interesting things with COVID, because suddenly everybody was having to watch very carefully as to what are the rules. And
moving targets, right?
Oh God, it was a huge moving target. At least the targets are slowed down a bit instead of doing this. But hey, I think companies in general, what I'm finding is that they are getting a little bit more aware of this, but also I think fatigued over it.
I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I was going to just touch on the fact that I'm seeing many businesses, business owners, operating in a highly stressed and stretched environment.
Yep.
I mean, hospitality is the classic one, construction, another one. Couldn't get people are doing 3 jobs, or business owners are actually not just even working in the trenches more so, but they're doing a number of jobs. You know, what can they be doing to protect their own sanity? I'm talking business owners.
I think first off, admit it, be aware of it. Using a counsellor or going and doing EAP for yourself, that is really important. Your own mental health is really important. Personally, I have some rules for myself because I got too embroiled in business and I got very close to a burnout point some years ago. And making sure that I had at least 1 day a week where the computer did not get switched on, having 2 phones so that I could switch off my work phone, that I could walk away from it. Having, I work from home, but having an office that I could close the door and it wasn't there in my face. So there's some little, just simple things that you can do, but make sure you get time away from the company and away from work. And that would be my biggest thing for business owners, is for keeping your sanity. It is only a job. It is only a company. And at the end of the day, if you could earn more stacking shelves down at the supermarket, maybe you should go and do it.
Yeah.
I know that maybe sounds harsh for some, but it is. Yeah, keep your eye on the prize about what you're actually working for, and if the prize is actually not there, then yeah,
you get one life, right? And you've got to be making sure that you are maximising it. And I always say to people, my best job ever was working in the supermarket because I could walk away. So
yes.
Look, Lisa, thank you for your time today. I mean, especially coming down and doing it in person. I'm sorry, it's been so good to have you here in person. And for those watching, I've known Lisa since 2015. I went to be the business advisor at the Auckland Business Chamber, and Lisa was providing so many businesses with an option around HR that was affordable, and it was so user-friendly. But I just keep coming back to people, don't just rely on another toolkit or another contract or another system. You need to have good experts to support you through the process. So do work with someone like Lisa or someone like me or someone like the engine to help you through that process. I can guarantee you though, based on all the systems out there, being a business advisor, I've worked with a lot of businesses, Lisa's system will save you tens of thousands of dollars and just really will build that capability in your business. Lisa, been so good having you here, and the next 6 months is just going to be so much more challenging in terms of people. So look, if you've got any concern, we've got a load of experience under our belt in compliance process, and most of all, keeping a lid on difficult moments. Do reach out, we're here to help. Thanks, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Catherine, and pleasure as ever to be down here.
Awesome. You're going back to Opera?
I am, yes.
Oh, I might be in the back of your van. So, take care, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.